Hello, everyone. This is Murli. Welcome back to the 100 Days of Full Stack App Challenge. We are looking at day 4, where we would like to define architecture that will support the product or service that we would like to build. On this day, we would like to look at what all key services that we need to build and define an architecture that support these services. Again, we are working on the product or service that we have identified earlier and focusing on the architecture today. What we would like to do as part of this exercise on this day is, for the product or service that we identified earlier, and let me remind you that this is your idea of a product or a service that you would like to build. And I will share a similar service or product that I would like to build as a case study as we go through this challenge as well. But please go back to the previous days if you haven't decided yet on what product or service that you would like to build while learning about building full stack apps. So the first thing that I would like to do is, based on the idea that you have chosen and that one specific use case that you would like to build as part of MVP, what are some of the essential services that you need to build? If it is a web application, which is the case for the case study, we would go ahead and build a UI front end, like a web page or a web app. Then a backend service could be a REST API service that supports the key functionality required. And of course, a data store. So that is a minimalistic architecture for a good chunk of web applications: a front end, an API service, and a data store of some form. It could be an RDBMS, or it could be a NoSQL kind of data store like DynamoDB, for instance, in AWS. But identify those services, just think about what do you need to support. You don't need to go with completely distributed architecture like microservices. You could even start with a simple app that is doing everything you need, which is typically referred to as monolith. It's not that important at all. You could easily break it apart later if you need, or completely change the architecture to something else. So don't worry too much about it, but think about what are those essential services that you need, or the components you need to build that idea that you have identified. And again, the focus is only on the primary use case that you have identified in the earlier steps, not the whole application. And the second and the most important part is identifying an architecture that supports rapid experimentation and iteration. So it should be very easy for you to go and make changes as you go forward, because we will be learning a lot about the product itself and what works and what doesn't work. And you should be able to go back and quickly make those changes. If it gets difficult to make changes or iterate your idea over and over, then that will cause you a big hurdle or big problem in creating any kind of product or solution. It's pretty, I would say, difficult to identify every single aspect of a service or a product upfront, on what works, what doesn't work, how to define what need to be defined and what need to be built. That's why we are taking this iterative approach, doing the absolute minimum we need to do today to move forward and build that service and have your end users use it and test it and give you feedback on what they like, what they want to see, and how it works, and essentially what works and what doesn't work. So the architecture should and must support rapid experimentation and iteration. So that's the key to choosing any architecture. And I will definitely encourage to pick something that works in the cloud with as minimal support as needed. And then go ahead and identify a technology stack that you are comfortable with. And if all things same, then pick something that you can easily learn and build it. Again, as I said, the focus is on rapid experimentation, not building something with end to end, because we already know everything. That's a bad assumption to start with. We know we have an idea that we want to build, but we don't know whether that will succeed, whether that's what exactly your users will need it. That's why we need to build that initial steps quickly. Even if you say quick and dirty, that's perfectly fine. And then get this application or service to the users as quickly as you can, and then gather the feedback, use that feedback to define the next step and keep building. That's why it is very important to pick something, both architecture as well as technology stack, that is really easy to rapidly experiment and iterate. And my suggestion, if you will be to pick up something that works well in the cloud. And I would start with basic set of microservices. It could start with just one service or one application that does both serving the UI as well as an API, as in just one service. Or you could just split into at least two. One is serving the UI and the other one is serving the API, and pick a data store that you're comfortable with. If you're not familiar with a NoSQL kind of data store, go ahead and pick an RDBMS if you're familiar with. It's not a big deal at this moment. Um, Either way, it's just fine. Idea is to get something built and bring it to end users to gather feedback. So that's all for day 4. Go ahead and identify what will be those key services or components you need to realize the idea and the preliminary use case that you have identified in the earlier steps. So we will see you tomorrow, where we will look at creating some placeholders and building our infrastructure in the cloud. Until then, see you. Bye-bye. Thank you.